Cool. My name is Cody Candler, and I'm one of the co-founders of Edboard Technologies. Before we start, I want you all to just think for a second about someone in your life. Do you know a child, a student, a friend, a sibling? If you're thinking of a girl right now, they have, according to numbers, a 1/3 of the potential of a male to proceed into a STEM career. We at Edboard want to give students the confidence to overcome these numbers because they aren't just a number. They're someone you know, and they are brilliant and creative and capable.
Sorry.
Statistically, right now in the U.S., only 30% of STEM degrees are held by women, and even less, 24% of STEM careers are pursued by women. We at Edboard Technologies are using research-backed methods to help promote the sense of self-confidence. Starting as early as 3rd grade, students develop a sense of competency in their education. They decide whether or not they're going to be a good student. Our methodology is to help students build an identity with STEM before the societal influences can start to tell them that it should be a white male in a STEM career. So our Edboard kits include a new product. There are plenty of STEM tools in the market. What we found though is that they don't help students develop deeper connections. There are snap circuits and there are awesome kits, but parents are telling us that their students can build these things without actually learning anything about circuitry. So our process is to help students develop a deeper understanding starting at this age, and also having our product model the industry standards of breadboards. Our beachhead market that we're going to break into initially is STEM schools in Colorado, specifically elementary. There are 1,091 elementary schools, and there has been $2.5 million in funding raised specifically for STEM programs. So there is money out there for people who are looking specifically for the kinds of products that we're trying to put into the field. And there's also new STEM policies that are helping develop a changing curriculum. So curriculum is currently dynamic. Everything's changing. STEM is a growing field and it's being implemented. There's also an issue of a lack of knowledge from teachers. So while there's this funding and people are trying to get STEM into their schools, not all the teachers have the background knowledge about circuitry to successfully bring it into the classrooms. Part of what we're trying to do is make this a seamless process. With our product comes free curriculum that is easy to implement and it's dynamic as well. So if a teacher wants 3 days of learning materials, that's what they can put in, and our program will help them decide if that's the curriculum for them. Our team is composed of a set of engineers from CU Boulder. I'm the CEO, I'm an education and engineering major. We also have our CTO, Ryan Good, and our DEO, Joy Reeder, who are both technology arts and media majors. Ruhan is our lead engineer, and she's a mechanical engineer. Huang is our lead electrical engineer who's been helping develop our kits. And Jeff is our independent study intern for the summer. I think we need an ask. Sorry, yeah, we need to polish that out. Yeah, I think that's what we have.
Okay. Did you have this written down, or were you just kind of winging it?
It is written down, but I don't have it well memorized. So.
That's fine. This is the first time y'all are going through this. I don't expect you to memorize it, but it needs work. It did not build narrative and momentum, and I think part of that is because you were kind of losing the plot as you were talking, and kind of trying to wing it a little bit. I didn't ever hear you say explicitly what the hell you guys do.
Gotcha.
What product you do. You went into kind of a minute and a half monologue about the impact that you're trying to achieve and
Yeah.
the the value props that you hope to engender amongst your users, but you never actually said like we're building
Yeah.
a tool to help elementary school kids learn the basics of circuits, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
And so you were 10 steps ahead of where you should have been.
Okay.
Right? You weren't even setting the table yet. And just the way that you kind of have the slides architected, you're talking a lot about the solution before you ever talk about more about the problem,
Yeah.
right? Like, how would you describe the problem you're solving in one sentence?
Society dissuades minority groups from entering into STEM. Do you have a better phrasing for that?
Just getting people involved in more diverse people or children involved in STEM subjects at an earlier age.
So,
Oh, the problem is more of a diversity.
so where you
Well-
began, if I may, where you began on your, you kind of came in with the question to think of someone, right? Which I understand where I think you want to go with that. The challenge with that kind of thing is that if you're queuing up a question for the audience to contemplate a scenario or an individual or an opportunity, and you don't really frame that question and make that the key, they're kind of lost. So for
Gotcha.
example, we had a company that was trying to do something for teachers last year, and they came up with a question of walking out on stage and saying, you know, I want you all to take a moment right now and think about a teacher who's impacted your life. And then there was a dramatic pause. And then on the count of three, I want you all to yell the name of that teacher out. Everybody can think of the teacher that's impacted their lives. And just saying that, you are all automatically thinking about that. You're trying to create an awareness about why this approach to STEM, STEAM education is effective for whom. And you have the picture of the girl, and then you're kind of like jumping around. Get
Gotcha.
really, really clear about, you know, if it's a persona that you're thinking about as to who that girl is or who that minority is or who that person that's underserved is, think about the kind of story you want to tell about their success path. And there's an opportunity there of what this access to education looks like if, and maybe there are stories out there of successful entrepreneurs that had an opportunity to take something where they didn't have a chance and then they got one. The thing that Chris Deerdorf just showed of the kid playing basketball and kind of following that
Yeah.
arc, that's the kind of path that perhaps you're looking to create in that introduction. And at that point, anybody who has kids, anybody who appreciates wanting kids to have better choices, more opportunities, will start to key in. And that's where you then can build that narrative momentum that Kyle's talking about, where you
Yeah.
talk about how your product works, why it fits, what it allows, and that competitive advantage. You kind of go from educating about a problem over a minute and a half, and then, hey, here's our product, $29.99, and then,
It's all over the show.
yeah.
Don't get lost in the weeds if you go and try and start your pitch by telling a story. You don't want to
Gotcha.
look up and be 2 minutes in and have the 98% of the rest of your pitch that you have to get through, and it's going to be a goddamn mess, right? Like, I would also push you guys on, I don't see how a $30 circuit kit solves the problem of unequal access, particularly
so-
to women and minority students.
Some
You
more
don't mention
specifics
that
on
at all.
Yeah,
And like my bullshit warning flag is flying very high,
gotcha.
right? If you want to talk about there's not sufficient tools to teach kids circuitry and STEM, totally different sort of problem. But if you're saying the core central thesis of your problem is that the education system weeds out or prevents women and minority students from getting access to the right training, like, you have not sold me on how you're solving that with a $30 EdBoard kit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Quick bit on the team slide since you're here. This is good feedback for all of you. If your team is super badass, if you've slayed some dragons, if you've got some qualifications, that's awesome. This is so common with first-time entrepreneurs, especially when you're building out your first big pitch deck. You feel like you have to talk about everybody. you don't.
Don't.
And it's kind of a waste of time unless there's something critically important about you, an advisory board, or a partner that speaks to the success path of the organization.
Gotcha.
It's a sort of laundry list of, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do. We met playing poker together and.
Useless time.
Yeah.
Do we need this slide at all?
Yes.
Oh, we need this slide, but don't talk about it.
You don't need to go through bit by bit
Yeah.
and tell us your degree and all that. Like, pointless, doesn't add value to it. If you've interned at places that have some social proof and value connected to their logos, put the goddamn logos on the slide. But, you know, you fell into a trap a couple of times of just like repeating what was on the slide. You know,
Yeah.
your beachhead funding slide, like, it was a beautiful slide. I got the main point you were going for. I didn't need you to like then repeat
Okay,
what you
yeah.
had on there. Use that as the way that I can look at the slide for 3 seconds, get the main gist of what you're trying to get across, and then I focus back on you and the story you're
Okay,
telling me
perfect.
that wraps around that.
Yeah.
Because I can't listen to you and process what's on the slide at the same time. And if you're just telling me what's on the slide, then your slide is useless or what you're saying is useless.
Okay.
Let's hear back from some of the other folks in cohort, things you like, things that need work, David, go ahead.
On your slide that had the pricing on it, yeah, is that in the background? Is that you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just like, I just wanted to make sure because that's what I thought, but I haven't seen your guys' product.
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
But no.
So probably more explicit discussion.
Well,
on
no,
that.
because I just assumed, but I was like,
Okay.
if that's not your product, it looks weird because I thought it was, but since it is, it
Yeah.
works out. So.
Wait, so they said that's not,
That
Oh,
is.
that
it.
is.
that
That's
is,
a product.
okay, yeah, I was stoked to see that, and like, cause I was always wondering what it looked like.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
So with this slide, first of all, be explicit that this is your product because
Uh-huh.
Okay.
it looks cool. But the other thing, take photos that highlight the features of your product because since I haven't seen this before, it took me a moment to figure out what was going on. I saw soldered wires and I was wondering if the kids were soldering the wires or if you had something
I
better.
think talking more specifically on how our product works in this slide would help with that.
Yeah.
I would do that.
And how it solves the
Yeah.
core problem that you use in your opening
Yeah.
as well. What is that barrier to women picking up these skills at that young age?
Perfect. Another thing that we're trying to
Mhm.
avoid,
See my.
our market, if we say our market is just
Kayla,
towards
you ordered lunch for
girls
Monday.
in STEM, we cut off a huge chunk of what this could go towards. So if anyone has ideas on how to like highlight that it could help with this issue without saying this is only for women and minorities in STEM.
I mean, if you just say providing access rather than like focusing our efforts, but
Yeah.
if you say like helping minorities and then you talk about how part of it is, you know, like you said in there, building the identity before they get a chance to have that identity shot down. If you hit that more from like a general, like it was a really good line that you had in there and you kind of buried it a little bit, but like if you were able to hit that a little bit more, it no longer becomes just a focus on bringing minorities and women into STEM. It becomes allowing everyone access to this
Yeah.
thing. Because I really enjoyed that line. I would also try to address why this is different than a breadboard.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I know from
Yep.
talking with you guys that it's, you know, larger so that there's, you know, more modular, like Lego-like connections so that kids can do it. But nothing in your pitch said anything differentiating this from a breadboard.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even to the point where you said, you know, we're following the industry standard of the breadboard without.
Yeah, that makes sense. Some more specifics on it.
Also, on Seth's point about the diversity aspect, the one other trigger of dissonance there is I'm looking at a white dude showing pictures of white girls,
True.
yet you're preaching about diversity,
Yeah.
right? So if you're gonna have that be your angle that you're going for, you might want to show some representative diversity in your
Yeah.
deck.
I have another follow-up comment on that. I think the important thing on the flip side is to not use women and people of color to sell something, but
Yep.
not being
Yeah.
able to back up that
Yep.
you're really talking about it. So kind of to follow Tim's point, what I didn't hear was, I heard what the mission was, but I didn't hear at all how this connects to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So whether that's, hey, our first 3 partners are Boys and Girls Club of America, I have a Dream Foundation, and Boulder Housing Partners or something
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
great.
if your first three partners make sense, or if your team or something, but.
And if you have those
it has to
partners,
have that.
those logos, that connection is important. The other thing too is be really excited about your product. You kind of transition from the big meaningful stuff to so are kits. And
Yeah.
when you guys came in to interview with us, Kyle and I were blown away by just how together your kind of in-room presentation of that
Yeah.
information looks. Think about introducing that excitement about your product and that fluidity of like simple circuits, easy to work with, hands-on and cost-effective, whatever those value props look like. That's where the pitch starts to really pull from all the exercise you've been doing over the last few weeks. And one of the hardest things is to get up and promote the hell out of yourselves, but be proud of it. It's
Yeah.
exciting, it works, and start thinking about how to connect with those pieces that were kind of hitting you on. So that's great. We're at time for that, so thank you both.
Yeah, thanks for
Koala
the
Code,
feedback.
you're on deck.